So now I would say the floor is open for the questions. So are there any questions? You can put them in the chat box, or you can comment on the Facebook Live, and I'll present it here.
If all of the panelists can open up their videos, I'll add all of them to the spotlight so then anyone can have a question asked.
Yeah, that'd be great. They can directly ask that too.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
My question is from Zara. Actually, Zara, although I was given this task to translate or her Persian to you all, her Farsi, but I was actually feeling a little curious to ask myself at that time, which I could not. So growing up in Bamiyan, Zara, all we have heard in this world about Bamiyan is the Buddha's statue being broken by the Taliban. Were you in this world at that time? Did you experience those times, or what was wrong with the statue being there, and how was the culture of Bamiyan? Was it affected by the statues being there, or were people still Muslims and they had to break it for nothing? What was your view?
تشکر یک جهان خانم فوزیه و باز هم به کمک خواهیتان نیاز دارم. من متاسفانه در بامیان متولد نشدم، اما اصلا از ولایت بامیان هستم. در بامیان تحصیلات دانشگاهی خود پیش بردم، لیسانس را. متاسفانه مجسمه ها یا تندیس های بودا در افغانستان توسط گروه طالبان در 11 مارس 2001 تخریب شد و این واقعا برای تمام مردم افغانستان و به خصوص برای مردم بامیان دردآور بود و هست.
Okay, so well, coincidentally, I was not born in Bamiyan, she says, but I grew up and went to school there. My schooling was there, but at that time when it happened, she says that well, the statues had been there forever, but in 2001 when they were broken, and the people in Bamiyan and all over Afghanistan were really grieved at that event, and that's all she can say about it now.
طوری که در سوال شما درک کردم اینه که کسانی از یعنی بوداییسم هم در افغانستان بودن، کسایی که پیرو این دین باشن یا از این مذهب. متاسفانه خب کسانی رو ما در بامیان نداریم که بودایی باشن و تمام کسانی که در اون زندگی میکنن بالاخره مسلمان هستن و ولی متاسفانه دیدگاه طالبان نسبت به تندیس‌های بودا برای تخریبش بیشتر این بود که بخواد یک تمدن، یک فرهنگ را و هنری را که سرش سالها کار شده بود رو تخریب بکنه و در این نشان دهنده از این بود که اونها هیچ ارزشی به داشته‌های فرهنگی تمدنی قائل نیستن و این ارزش‌ها فقط مربوط به مردم افغانستان و کسانی که در بامیان زندگی میکرد نیست، بلکه مربوط تمام بشریت بود و باید به اون احترام گذاشته میشد که متاسفانه این کار نشد از طرف گروه طالبان و در اون زمان هم تمام کسانی که به داشته‌های فرهنگی احترام میگذاشتند این کار را متاسفانه تقبیح کردند و از طرف گفتن که این کار واقعا دردآور بود و هیچگاه هم فراموش نخواهد شد.
Well, it was not that many. There were many Buddhists in Bamiyan before that. Also, there were actually in Bamiyan majority population. There are not many. Actually, there are no Buddhists living there. Most of them are Muslims. But when Taliban broke these statues, their actual attack was on the arts and culture of the country more than the religion. Their actual problem which still exists is they do not want any promotion of culture, arts, and such fields in that area, in that region. And for that matter, people in Afghanistan were really worried, and they still are. Thank you. I think
thank you so much, Fazia, and thank you so much, Sarah. Like there's one question by Khushi Kabir. She has raised her hand. Ma'am, you can ask yourself.
Yes, thank you. I was just about to write the question. Meena had said that Meena wrote it. it would be easier. I wanted to just ask a question generally to everybody who spoke. Given the situation of what our states are like, the kind of, especially when Amar spoke very clearly about the othering not only of dissenters or people who are different within their own countries, but othering of go to India, go to your Indian agent, go to Pakistan, the Muslims or the Tamils before the Muslims, the anti-Muslim feeling came in. In Bangladesh, it's the same that's happening. I just want to understand that, do all the speakers here feel that there is any hope, any chance that, or a reason for South Asia to come together? Is it possible for South Asia to come together? South Asians, I wouldn't say South Asia, but South Asians to come together in any way whatsoever? Is it a dream that we're just dreaming that will never happen, or can it really happen? What are your feelings on this?
Well, the question is posed to all the 4 speakers, so I'll start with Amar, Jan, and then out among the 4 speakers, if anyone wants to address that. So, because Amar has to leave, so Amar, you have the floor for like 1 to 2 minutes maximum.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you so much, Prish Saiba, because I'm a big fan of your work and I follow your work in the context of Bangladesh. I think it's absolutely necessary for us to think in a more cosmopolitan way. I'm not saying that it is easy, but the danger is that because progressives have become so insular themselves, they're only thinking about the local level, the village level. We've left the universal to right-wingers. Their imagination, the Muslim right-wing imagination, is about creating a caliphate. The Hindu imagination is by Hindu Rashtra. The grand ideas of history today are with the right. And this, I think, is a terrible reversal, that the right is the one that's giving revolutionary, bold ideas, and the left is just being defensive and protective, protect my rights of the Constitution, protect my women's rights, human rights, all very important. But I think we cannot, it almost seems like we're the one who are trying to conserve, and the others are the ones who actually have grand agendas. And I think we have to flip that at some point and really say that there is another way of being Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, Afghan, and another way of being South Asian, and another way of being human. Because what we're being sold in the market is deadly and dangerous. And we need to, in my opinion, in any case, need to come up with bold ideas. And I think there will be resonance because people are looking for bold ideas and people are looking for broad schemes, which the left used to present back in the day, and now it's retreated. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Amar. Anyone else who wants to address this question? Lara, Sushmita,
yeah, I'd like to just follow on that, if I may, just for a minute. I just want to kind of, kind of echo what Amar was saying. I think it's also really important for us to be very honest in assessing our own movements and the ways in which nationalisms are also present and have become more of a trend in our own movements. And I think that's a very real problem, that even in our movements, we're finding more and more that nationalisms are taking root and have much more kind of favor, and I think nationalisms across the region and across the world have just become, much more popular and much more favored, even within movements. And I think we have to be really aware of that, and we have to be very honest about that. And I think the second thing that I just wanted to say was that I think it's also very important to connect to not just regional, but global trends, which are, again, really reinforcing nationalisms, which are anti-migration, in particular, anti-migration, and, really reinforcing the kind of importance of the nation state and the violence of borders. So I think that's the context in which we are operating right now, and it's not just a regional reality, but I think very much a global reality. Just like Amar was saying, I think conservative right-wing forces have really captured the narratives about the nation state and about that identity. So I think we should be very clear about how those things also take root in our own struggles, and that we are not above that rhetoric sometimes, unfortunately.
Right. Okay, next question is going to be by Priyanka Singh. She has raised her hand. Priyanka, you can ask that question yourself. Priyanka, are you there?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was actually it's a question mostly to, I think, Lara and Amar, those left, and there was something that that came up at the end about how people in India are looked upon as agents of Pakistan, and that happens across the border as well. And while the session is going on, I cannot also not help not reflect upon the fact that the name that was assigned to me at birth is what sort of makes it easy for me to be able to facilitate the session. Because had I been a practicing Muslim in India, had I been born into a family assigned a Muslim name, had I been born into a practicing Muslim family, even if I be an atheist, for me to be able to even facilitate the session would have been impossible. And that's a question answer that I'm looking for. I would love to hear thoughts about what is it that makes it politically expedient in the first place for individuals and groups to play up discrimination on basis of religion and ethnicities, and how to pave the way forward while navigating that challenge.
Thanks, Priyanka, for asking that question. See, one very important thing that you said is that oftentimes when we are doing our work, we are, and that's something that Waqas spoke about, happens in Pakistan as well, labeled as Indian agents and Pakistani agents. And I think the genesis for this, and it's very important that we hear what the right wing is saying. What are they saying in these political campaigns? What are they saying on the ground? How are they interacting with the community? What kind of narratives are they presenting? What stories are they presenting? If you see what's happening in India, the partition story has been used so much in the election campaigning, in setting up this narrative of Muslims being the other, and that comes from the whole partition that comes, and that's where whenever you raise the issue of minority rights, whenever you talk about secularism, whenever you talk about rights of workers or rights of any vulnerable group, automatically it is it becomes easy to vilify you and to negate what you're saying by presenting you as the other. And by the other in India, it's very clearly right now Muslim other, and and that's why the reference to go back to Pakistan, because Muslims have chosen another state, which was Pakistan at the time of partition, and those who stayed back are not really Indian. So this is the kind of narrative that is always being presented. So it's being used as we speak. It's always what we witness on social media. It's the language that is used on Twitter, but it's being used in the community, and that is where it finds so much credence. It's an idea that has become very deep rooted, and friends before me have already raised how we are all facing this kind of religious majoritarianism. We are opposing this authoritarian state. The manner in which the governments are working, the manner in which the political elites are working is quite similar. It's quite, they're using the same kind of strategies. This whole erasure of history, saffronization that is taking place over here is so much like religious fundamentalism taking place through other religious context in other countries in South Asia. So we are actually facing so many similar challenges. And while saying this, I'd just like to get back to the first question that had been raised by Khushi on do we see any kind of regional cooperation happening? Do we see us coming together as civil society? Will it strengthen us? Do we feel that it will be of help? I think it's going to be of help. It's going to be of immense help, because we have so many experiences to share and so much to learn from each other, but also because they are learning from each other, right? I mean, we have the political elites, we have these authoritarian regimes learning from each other. Many of the models are getting replicated in each of our states. But many times, the kind of legislative changes that are brought in India, you see similar changes that are being brought in other places. There was reference to, Prevention of Terrorism Acts. We have the UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, which is actually being used against activists in the Bhima Koregaon case that I spoke about, and the Delhi riots conspiracy case that I spoke about. We have similar tools that are being used to, stifle dissent and silence populations. And we're also seeing this in terms of the kind of changes that are coming into, because we had a very good speaker speak about, social media. The similar kind of changes that are being brought in, in IT rules, information technology rules, and in the digital space, by making intermediaries cooperate with the state in giving out our private information. So we are facing very similar challenges, and for us to come together, we will work at both levels. We will, one, of course, be able to present a counter narrative, and we'll be able to, I feel, instead of saying traitors of the world unite, we are people of the world unite, and we have to present them as traitors. If I'm called an anti-national, I say I'm not an anti-national. I work for the interests of the people of the country, and I cannot be anti-national. It is you who are working against the interests of the country who's anti-national. It's a very simple, it's very simplistic of me to say that, but I just feel like, and with the farmers' protests, I'm energized, to see that success happen, because we saw the power of the anti-CAA protest, but it did not lead to an overturning of the legislation. But with the farmers' protests, we saw that even in the heat of the pandemic, with more than 700 farmers dead, we saw that victory. So I think it is, we do need to come together. We have a lot of challenges. And most of what everyone has spoken about is what, is happening back in India. And Priyanka, I think, me, in spite of in spite of coming from a Muslim background, my name has saved me. I've had so many advantages because of my name. If I had a typical Muslim name, it would have been very difficult. Many times my identity gets, but as soon as I talk about it, of course, it's very different. And you also face very covert, in covert ways you face discrimination, and sometimes people are just very open to you about their communal sentiment, because they don't know that you're Muslim. So it works both ways. So I just want to also say I get what you're saying, and I think it's very important for us to play an important role in changing the situation.
Okay, so I will be taking the last question, I would say, and that is by Hasnan Jamil. After that, I would request all the panelists to please show their screen so that we can take a picture before the event ends and before we move towards the closing remarks. So Hasnan, you have the floor and you can ask your question right now. And the panelists will hear you and the noise too.
Waqas, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Hello,
yes, Hasnan, what's your question? Yes, we can hear you. What's your question, Hasnan?
So my question is about the political agenda for all what we are expecting and what we are imagining, the South Asian peace and security and the people-to-people connection. But when it comes to like put this work into action, we need a combined political agenda. But in Pakistan, particularly in whole South Asia, we the people who talk about the human rights are considered to be only the civil society or the idiotic people. But when it comes to the political action and making political party, even political agenda, combined agenda, because eventually the decision making is made by the political elite. So why, can we expect all what we are saying without any combined political agenda? This is my question for you.
Oh, that's all. Okay. So Lara or Sushmita or Subha or Zara, who would like to address that question? Sushmita, you can, maybe.
Yeah, I think you raise a pertinent point. I mean, it is going to be challenging, no doubt, because you can hear me now, right?
Oh, I can hear you. Just please, it's a request. Can you please keep it short for
yeah, of course,
a minute or two.
30 seconds.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to say that, of course, it is very challenging because South Asians have come before. It's not the first time that we're thinking of South Asians coming together. They've done it in the past. There are lots of South Asian. There's still quite a lot of South Asian platforms where human rights activists, feminists have come together and done great work. And Sapan is an example of, younger activists coming together. But I think there is a challenge whenever nation states are concerned or political elites are concerned. As our speakers have pointed out, it's in their interests to hold on to this fear, to sort of market this fear and war and intolerance and hatred. So in terms of how far this can go, I want to remain optimistic, but I don't know for sure if this will, really see results that have been different from what we've seen in the past. As we know, SARC didn't really go anywhere because the political elites didn't want it to go anywhere. And so a state-led mechanism, of course, we need the state's involvement in some ways for a regional platform to work. But whenever states are involved, there seems to be an impasse. Things seem to somewhere. So I don't know what the solution is, but of course we need to push forth, and as other speakers have pointed out on multiple occasions, like even if our governments aren't doing the work, we must take on the work and do it ourselves.